Africa, a wave of protests is spreading throughout the continent. It began in Kenya with protests against their budget, or the finance bill as they call it. Then they spread across the border to neighboring Uganda, and now Nigeria is gearing up to become the third protest hotspot. Young Kenya's President William Ruto is under immense pressure. He is struggling to contain public anger because, like the Kenyans, the Ugandans have also decided to protest.
I believe it won't be a world war internationally, but I believe it will be a world war in the sense of it won't be a world war in the sense of using guns and nuclear and all of that, like how it has always been said world war will be fought with nuclear and all of that. I believe it won't be that way, but I believe it's going to be a world war where you hear a lot of riots all over the globe, as in the world is having war, against the systems, against their own governments. Yes, I believe you'll hear a lot of riots, and I believe it will be 2023 will be just a start of it, but it is something that we'll be seeing more and more as the years go on.
For those of you who don't know, Kenya has been facing protests for weeks now. They began in mid-June. People took to the streets to protest against the country's annual budget. The Finance Bill 2024, that's what the budget was called. Ruto's government wanted to raise taxes. He wanted to tax basics like bread and fuel. But the people were having none of it. Young Kenyans organized themselves on social media. Gen Z led the charge here, and soon thousands were out on the streets. On June 25th, the protesters stormed the parliament building and they forced Ruto to back down. He scrapped his own finance bill and withdrew the proposed new taxes. But by then it was too late. The protests had morphed. They were no longer just about taxes. Instead, the target had become Ruto himself. There was supposed to be a massive demonstration today. Young Ugandans had planned to march to their parliament building in the capital, Kampala. They wanted to protest against endemic corruption in their country. Their target was a senior government official, Anita Among, Uganda's Speaker of Parliament. Nigerians are preparing to march against the government. They plan to hold peaceful protests next week on the 1st of August. And this has scared the Nigerian establishment. The country's president, Bola Tinubu, issued a warning on Monday. He said the protests were the work of some sinister people. And he asked Nigerians to not join. The next day, Nigeria's police chief joined the chorus. He said the protests were ill-advised and that the police would not sit back and watch. 2 days later, the Nigerian military chimed in. A military spokesperson said the protests may lead to anarchy. He said that the army would not allow Nigeria to spiral out of control.
Bangladesh remains tense, with some students having vowed to continue protests a day after the Supreme Court scrapped most of the government job quotas they were demonstrating against. They want the government to implement the court order before they call off their demonstrations. More than 150 people have been killed there in a week of violence. The quota scheme meant a third of jobs were reserved for relatives of veterans from the country's war for independence from Pakistan in 1971.
Now let's look at the UK, which also saw violence on the streets yesterday. A riot erupted in the city of Leeds in an area called Hare Hills. It began last evening after social service workers went to a house in the area. They were trying to remove some children from a house. This caused an uproar. People gathered in the streets and the police were called in. It seems the police helped take the children away, and that is when the crowd's anger exploded. What followed were scenes of carnage. The police were attacked, a bus was torched, and the riots continued through the night. Here's our report.